And we are back. They tried to get rid of us. They tried to take us off the air, but they have failed. We are now back.
Is it the same link?
We're online. We're talking on live on YouTube right now.
With the same link?
Titan is discombobulated here. No, it's a new link. Go to the Faz Radio YouTube and check out our latest broadcast.
Oh my goodness.
So apparently YouTube just disconnected somehow, and I'm using OBS.
Yeah, well, okay, so listen, I think it was YouTube, not OBS, because I can't pull up any of the other. The one from Vera, it says error loading, unable to be found. So there's all kinds of errors happening here all at once.
Okay, let's see here. We have, anyway, we have Luke Brandenberg chat part 2 live here twice. So I'm going to grab that link here so that everybody can get on board.
Yep. I'm grabbing it myself. Control copy.
There you go. So who do we have on? Who do we have? We have some listeners listening. You guys type something in the chat. It says we have 3 watching, 4 watching. They seem to have found it. Some people.
Oh, nice.
We tried to throw them.
Announcement there.
I'm going to blame YouTube for this one because everything was fine. OBS was recording, and then YouTube reset, and OBS was like, "Hey, do you want to stop streaming?" So I hit stop streaming, and then I hit stop streaming, and then it completely just borked OBS, which crashed, and I had to redo that, and now we're back.
All right, I got it out in the announcements. We should be good now.
Okay, so when we last talked, we were introducing Luke Brandenberg, who is a writer, and we were talking about, he's a crypto writer, and we're talking about a new site that he's working with, called RaisingStake.com. In fact, I'm going to share that screen if I can. It is now sharing.
While you're pulling that up, Faz, Luke, hey man, tell us, how were you involved there? Is that something you started with a friend? What got you into that area?
Well, no, so it's there's a few guys that have done. I've been kind of looking into different opportunities over the past few months, and started it with these guys, Jason, Kyle, that have done similar things in the past, as far as news websites, and they have connections in different areas, and that I don't. So it's a bit of a partnership, but I wouldn't say that I titled myself the head of crypto content, and that is the extent of what I do there as of right now. However, I look to we all I want to do a lot more. I want to basically, man, we're here. The reason I came to the space, the reason that, the fact that the continuous learning that's possible in the crypto industry because of how fast it moves that's why I'm here. I like to learn new things, and that's what writing gives me that ability. So, it's all just an ongoing thing. So this is RaisingStake is we're still just getting started, but we wanted to get a lot of good content out there to begin with.
So is this just going to be writing? Are you looking to do video? Are you looking to do aggregation? Or is this just strictly articles?
I think that I'll leave the door open for everything. I will say that I have a background in writing and I enjoy writing, but it can go anywhere it needs to go.
What kind of engagement have you had so far with some of the other feedback besides us talking here today? What are people saying about the content?
We like I said, we're just getting started, so there hasn't been a ton of they're just starting to connect some dots on the back end, but from myself sharing the content with people I know, everything has been, super positive. I think that we're doing what we intended to do with the content so far, and it's just a matter of just grinding it out and keeping on top of things, and then continuing. But everything I've heard back so far has been good, and I'm really appreciative of that. And I'm working hard. Like I'm trying to get better with every piece I do. I'm trying to learn a little bit more. I'm trying to get things a little bit cleaner and a little bit more, just a little bit better every time.
Well, you're doing a great job at that so far. What like when you sit down and go, "Oh, all right, I want to write an article." Do you plan the article first, or do you bump into something and just because of your love for crypto want to dig into some how do you figure out what to write about every day?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes I bump into something. A lot of times, I sit in front of my computer and I pull up, I just pull up I've got several sources that I look at for news on a daily basis. I find something that I think is interesting enough that I want to write about it and is what that I think will apply to our audience, and then I choose something and then I dive into it as heavily as possible, and just try to cover. One of the things, and it's actually something that once I have a topic, I it would sound like things would go smoothly from there. However, what I've found lately over the past few weeks is I've been getting slowed down by, like, I'll dive into one topic, and then while I'm researching that topic, a side topic comes up, and all that, I'm sure crypto guys can all relate, and not just crypto, just any tech in general. You can go down these rabbit holes and you can find five other things that have interested you, and then before long it's been 2 hours and you've been looking into something that didn't even you didn't even start trying to look into. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I go down rabbit holes with that all the time.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things I know Faz will probably want to comment on this. One of the big things, and Faz and I have talked about it a lot in the past from news sources and such, is that it can be difficult to be objective when it comes to writing because you always have like a personal slant on things which they
Always.
say CNN is more liberal and Fox is more conservative. How do you kind of force yourself down that straight and narrow path?
Well, I mean, I think that it's a balance, between, like, being honest to what you think is right. Like, you have to, as a writer, like, you can't have too many rules. You have to let yourself give your own opinion from time to time, and let things come into play, because that's what makes for good content. But you should always provide the other side. You should always, even if you should always try to provide the other perspective, and that's important. But, like, and then you should try to be as consistent as possible. So, and I have a lot, and that we could talk for an hour just about media and about all of the things that go along with that. But it's important to me that I stay as partial as I can. However, I'm not afraid to, like, put in a little bit of, man, like, especially you'll notice sometimes at the end of articles, I'll kind of give a little bit of opinionated content about, like, man, this is what a mess. For example, let's just say the general idea of the US's regulation on crypto is a mess. That idea, you'll see that throughout my work, and I don't really have a problem promoting it because I feel like it's backed up by a lot of my research and my time.
I'll tell you what, I think that's really important that you do put a personal opinion. That's why people want to read you versus just anybody.
Right.
I mean, you can get an AI article to write something and people will read it, but it's that personal opinion what you're attracted to when you're looking at a news source or anything else you want and trust. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any fans here on Faz Radio if they didn't like what our opinions were.
Exactly. Yep.
But I do think you did a really good job with that of throwing out the facts and here's what it is, and then putting a little bit of commentary in there with it about what it means to you. And I think that's going to garner that viewership. Are you
Hope
the only
so.
writer there now, Luke?
For in the crypto space currently, yes, yes.
Okay. Is there plans to add more writers? Are you going to be the primary crypto guy, or how's that going to work out?
Yeah, there's plans to expand in the future over the next, between now and the end of the year. How depending on how things go with it, we'll probably bring on some more writers. We'll probably bring on some guest writers. We'll do some different things, and I will be handling the management of that. But right now, yeah, right now every crypto article on there, like if you go to the crypto category, every article in the crypto category is me right now. That'll change in the future, but I'll always write. I'll always be a writer on there, but I will also be passing some of that work along as we proceed.
So, what are the areas of crypto that fascinate you the most that you want to write about? Is it Bitcoin? Is it DeFi? Is it NFTs? What is your favorite area to talk about?
Mm. Well, that's a that's a heck of a question, man. There's so much out there that's interesting, and I found myself because I always my philosophy. I in business school, I learned and I've had this philosophy in my head of like, all right, you need to specialize. That's how you create value. That's how you make money, and in the crypto world, I've tried, but there's so many things that interest me. I mean, and the scope and the mass and the growth of decentralized finance is incredible to me, and I love looking into that stuff. Just and then you go even wider, just to the concept of a decentralized economy. That's a whole nother thing. And then you could narrow it down more into what people are referring to as GameFi and play to earn and all that stuff. And I love that stuff as well. And metaverse, but and then of course that involves your NFTs, and I see a lot of potential in that space. But I guess what like my overarching thing is all about, and I think it's common among a lot of crypto people, is decentralization. Trying to take the like if we have a single authority in something and trying to decentralize that across the world where it's a better system for I have 3 kids and I would like to leave the world a better place than it was when I got into it. And that's at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Awesome. And speaking of that, I did notice, didn't you do an article about the Tornado Cash fiasco? I call it a
Absolutely.
fiasco.
Oh yeah. It
Faz and I
was a
did some
fiasco.
shorts on that, and we've talked about it a little bit here on Faz Radio. What's your take? What do you think about what's happened with Tornado Cash and what that means for privacy?
I think that it's a dangerous I think it's an example of what can happen and what people need to keep their eyes on. And what if things don't go the right way in the crypto world, like this is how things end, or this is how things go wrong. Is that the Tornado Cash is an example of how things, it's just one example, and the slippery slope mentality. You can argue against that all you want, and I understand it, and I completely under. I mean, I get it, but it's a perfect example of what could happen to everyone in the future and how we have to like there it's why it's such a fiasco as you called it, is because people noticed that leaders in the crypto industry saw it happen and noted and felt the same thing I did, was that you're starting to mess with human rights, and it's a complicated issue that it involves human rights and national security, and there's a lot going on, but you can't just go out and and this is an opinion, in my opinion, it's really not a great idea to start going out and arresting people for code. In its basic sense. Now, so I don't know. You said you guys have talked about it, but so there, you have a guy that a developer, a coder that puts together the Tornado Cash protocol, and then you have I forget. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but the hackers from North Korea. They basically have evidence that they used it, and we don't want that. That's a national security issue. There's a lot of things that go along with that. But the developer just wrote the code, and so what many would see as a gray area. I guess when it comes down to it, what many see as a gray area is a slippery slope.
So actually, I have some comments on that. Because I've been really one for open source programming for a long time, and similar objections have been lobbed at open source code. The difference with, I would assume, a site like Tornado Cash is it's something that's enabling an enemy of a nation. And what you're going to see, what I'm sure you've seen already with crypto, is each country, if it has a problem with crypto, if it feels that crypto is going to enable their own enemy nation, they themselves are going to take action. And I kind of feel that the action that the United States is taking right now is pretty lame, which is, don't you dare open that door, or we'll penalize you for opening that door. You will apply sanctions and we will arrest you. But really, it's lame because they can't stop people. I mean, you get people that obfuscate themselves enough, which is what the bad guys are doing. Then they're going to be able to do it nonstop. And so it's like locking your door in the grocery store parking lot. Okay, well that'll keep a lot of Americans from using the site, or that'll keep some crime from going on, but they're not actually solving the problem. And we knew this was coming. We knew this was happening because when all this decentralized stuff came about, we're like, oh, anybody's going to be able to use it. Nobody can stop us. Everything's unstoppable. Well, come on. Nations are going to respond in their own best interests. And so while I feel that it's in our right to be able to do whatever we want, national security is going to always play a higher priority in all of our rights than we would like it to. So that's a battle I think that has just started and is going to keep going for a long time. So it's more like that's what I said in the Tornado Cash video was buckle up, because this is just the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would agree with that, Faz. And I would also just make the comment how if you yes, it's gonna take many years. I agree with you and everything you said, but if the ideal, what is our end goal? What is the end goal? The ideal thing that we probably won't get to, but if we can land close to 100 years from now, where do we want to be? And we're going to have to, at some point, a lot of issues are going to have to get solved between countries for us to continue to exist. I guess that's what it comes down to. It
forces another issue, and that issue is, right now, in the United States, if I wanted to buy something from you, and I didn't want the government to know about it, I can grab some dollar bills, and I could go over to your house, and I could pay you, and then you can do me whatever I want you to do.
Exactly.
However, the United States feels the need that it.
So Faz, I'll text you. I'll text you later about that. I'll
okay.
Send you a message.
Yeah, the United States feels the need to enforce all of its laws on everything you do, including in your own house. And of course, they have to. They're kind of held back by these whole uncomfortable privacy regulations. But crypto basically enables you to do all those private transactions in a over the computer now, and they don't like it. They're used to monitoring every single transmission, and I'm sure that there's a number of laws out there that a number of secret laws and national security laws that give them the right and the responsibility to do that. This has been brewing in other areas for a long time, but we've never been able to we've never been forced into the issue. Crypto forces that issue. And now it is, if I'm going to pay you something, they're going to see a transaction. They're going to see Faz paid Luke something. What'd he buy? And
that's the funny thing about blockchain.
My first response is none of your fucking business. And they're going to say, well, national security says it's our business, buddy. And then, I mean, that's going to be a fight. But every single country is doing this. And of course, some are worse than others. Like China just says it's just flat out illegal if we don't know what you're doing. But the United
China says one thing.
But it's not going to go away because it is a valid use case to say that if you allow North Korea to launder a bunch of money, then they're going to be able to hold a nuclear, gun at a lot of people's heads, not just the United States heads. But I mean, North Korea isn't just threatening the United States. They don't like everybody. So
that's a problem. Yeah, I agree.
So it's not a
massive issue.
And not only that, they're an example of what could happen. Okay, fine, North Korea does it. What if you're France and one of your enemy nations do it? And it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have the same dilemma coming up in every country. So there's a point there, and I don't think that people, my own 2 cents is, people shouldn't go and just raise their petard and be like, hey, I get my rights, I demand my rights. If I was president, I would say, what's a happy medium? And I think
always
my prediction of a happy medium is to get used to KYC, buddy, because it's coming. I'll be able to, I might even be able to pay you something privately as long as they know where the money came from. So the money came from this bank and it entered your bank. They at least want to be able to see the money coming into my bank and going into another one. They want to see the transaction. And
the problem with that, like that highlights the problem, and that's a lot of what I cover on the site is what exactly should they be able to do? Because I agree with you, there has to be a middle ground completely. But just I interrupted you because that's the topic. That's why regulation right now in the U.S. and around the world is so important, is because what they want to, what exactly is right now, it's up in the air, and it's a problem because there's too much, in my opinion. There's a lot of it's too vague. There's not enough clarity, and there's you can read some of the articles where we go into some of those issues, but they need to be defined.
Okay, so let's
do you agree with that?
Yes, but the problem is there's a lot of situations that defy definition. For example, okay, so they're used to, let's say that the federal government is not allowed to monitor any transactions whatsoever. And then, I don't know, I go buy a gun and shoot up a school. So then what's going to happen is the federal government's going to say, how can we have known about this beforehand? Now, usually what they do is they have some suspects out there and they'll monitor your finances or they'll monitor, other aspects of your life. And what's going to happen is in a lot of these cases, they're going to say, we didn't see it coming. We should have seen it coming, but we didn't see it coming because we couldn't see his finances. And this could be anybody that they suspect of a crime. So I'm not trying to get political, but I'm just using the gun shooting up a school business as an example of something where the federal government actually actively monitors some people to find out if a crime is going to happen before it happens. And so their law enforcement is always going to want to get in the middle or at least have some ability to backtrace. So fine, say I did do those things and I succeeded. Now they're going to want to check my finances after the fact to see, did I have any accomplices? Well, if I'm making bunches and bunches of anonymous transactions, they're going to be like, that's all they're going to have. They're not going to have anything else, and they're not going to be able to trace it down. So I'm not taking a position on this because I see it both ways. I see that we must have privacy, but there must be a way to keep people safe. And I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not going to suggest I do.
I don't either, man. I don't either.
So that got really deep there. I didn't mean to get it as deep. But Mr. Titan, was I interrupting you at all?
No, not at all. a lot of what you're saying resonated with me as well, but I'm on, of course, the wing with that. All right, so I don't think there has to be a happy medium with it. I really don't. Anything people now there's a phrase going around now, and I agree with it 100%. Why is the expectation not privacy? The expectation should be privacy. And the narrative has been pushed on this that, everything has to be out in the open. And I don't see it that way. It wasn't that way for a very long time until, as you mentioned, they got used to it. They got used to seeing all our credit card transactions. They got used to seeing all of our bank records because everything was done electronically. So for me, I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. I don't think it's any of their business. um, Things are going to happen whether you monitor them or not. And I can't see the push like they've been making.
Well, there seems to be a disagreement, and I'm going to try and stay away from politics, but there seems to be a disagreement in this country, in particular, of how far law enforcement will go to enforce laws. And privacy, I think, is definitely something that should be paramount. But then law enforcement seems to not know how to enforce the law without violating privacy. And if you ask anyone else that might, be for all sorts of privacy, I mean, you're forced into a polemic position of no matter what, you cannot go investigate stuff. Well, that's fine if your mother gets killed and you're fine, or your wife gets killed and you're fine with not, not violating the suspect's privacy. But it's another thing if my mother or my wife gets killed, each person's going to have to go through this that suffers as a result of a crime. So it's going to be a challenge. I do see some some trustless ways of doing this, such as there are ways I think that you could make it so that the federal government could identify a number, but not identify you. However, if they can identify a number, eventually they can crunch the numbers and eventually get down to where it is you. Yeah. So that's kind of semi-privacy. Anything other than the government not knowing what's going on isn't going to work. But you actually cannot defend your country if you don't know what's going on.
Well, okay, so again, it is that level of subjugation there that you have, because I can go right now, okay, up to any home improvement store, and I can spend $1,000 in Bitcoin on 3 ingredients that could be to make my grass greener or to make something go boom. Now, where do you draw that line then? They see $1,000 and maybe, I don't know, maybe for some reason they get receipts somehow attached to this for quote monitoring or whatever it is. Where do you draw that line?
Well,
what
if you've gone to a store, if you've gone to a store, you can easily say, well, your transaction is completely private, but then again, you're surrounded by cameras. You have, there's innumerable other ways to tell who you are. So in one sense, you can get around that privacy by saying, well, it doesn't matter if we don't see the money exchange. We have the tape on the cash register, which is a record of the transaction, and we have the cameras in the stores. So they have other means. But when you make a Bitcoin transaction from your house to somewhere else, the only means of seeing what you're doing is to actually see that transaction. Because the way that Bitcoin is done, or crypto is done, I mean, that's it. It's just that transaction. You might have everything else to be, hidden, but the transaction. So that's the real dilemma. It's the only avenue they have. Whereas when you mention you go into a store, they have many other avenues. They can see you drive away from your house. There's cameras all the way from your house to the store. Now, 100 years ago, they just didn't solve those crimes. Somebody went and bought all that stuff, and if they killed the store owner, Well, and there are no other witnesses. Well, too bad, so sad. But these days, they could kill the store owner and everybody in the general vicinity, and you'd still be able to figure out who that person is. So these are very practical questions, which are going to have some really hard, going to have us really have some really hard answers. We're going to have to really face what we want.
Well, I'll step in right here and say, that's kind of what this is. What if you go back to the basics of blockchain and what it's about and what it does and one of the many things that I love about it is that it puts things out in the open, and contrary to a lot of like public belief that it's some like secret society or something like that's all. It's actually like providing everything, all the information you ever need. It's actually kind of the opposite. But
well, not with Tornado Cash. Tornado Cash makes it so things aren't.
Tornado, the mixer software, the mixer that Tornado Cash had kind of changes that. But so the reason we're having this conversation in the first place is because crypto has moved and blockchain technology has been moving at a rapid pace, and especially in the U.S. and I think everywhere in the world, like regulation and government runs at a slower pace. It always, I mean, from what it's just not, it hasn't been able to keep up. And I mean, that's what we need to all these questions, and it's fun to have the conversations, but like we need clarity on what they have to catch up. And I worry that the crypto space is going to continue to move forward at a pace at the pace it is, and that regulation is going to continue to struggle to keep up because and it's not just the lawmakers in Washington, it's the voters also behind that. They're also behind. It's impossible. You have to. When I got into the crypto, I love it because I could spend 8 to 12 hours a day reading and researching the industry and still barely keep up, probably wouldn't keep up with the amount of development and innovation in it. So my point behind it is that like, it's ahead. We're so far ahead. The technology is so far in front of the regulation that there's this gap, and that's what that gap is what we're talking about. The gap is like, well, what about this? What about this? And in the US, we're going to end up someday voting on those issues. However, is that gap between where the technology is at and where regulation is at, is that gap going to get smaller or is it going to get more? And one more point, the countries that can narrow that gap, can shorten that gap, are they going to be ahead from an economic perspective versus the countries that continue to fall behind?
Well, remember that money is a very, very, very
Absolutely.
tightly controlled area, and for thousands of years, governments have worked very hard to tightly control the transfer of value, and this change from government money to non-government money is so new, so radical that I would say it's bigger than the internet. And I'm surprised that it's actually moving forward as fast as it is. But everybody, all the governments are still panicking because they know that the moment they lose control, they've lost control. And I mean, it's going to be like herding cats. People will constantly be doing the crypto. Things will be illegal, but then people will just do it anyway. And then they'll do all these secret things that you wouldn't normally be able to, that they're trying to tell you not to do right now. If everything's illegal, just like with China, where they have that Great Wall of China, the Great Electronic Wall of China that people constantly use Tor and other tools to get around, people will just do that with money. And so
it's a loss of control. It's terrifying. That's terrifying to me too.
So it's going to take a while for government to get used to this new concept, and this is where education is a big deal. I think
huge.
I think honestly, I'm going to express an unpopular opinion. I don't feel that news articles need to be expressing opinions. I think news articles need to express just to illustrate what's really happening. And what's really
See
happening.
that?
What's that?
I just said I understand that. Yeah.
And people need to see that this is a crypto is far more consequential than everybody thinks. All my friends seem to think that crypto's a scam. Relatives seem to think, okay, there's something to it, and of course, there's all the degens which prove them right. But then there's the government, which they're saying it's a scam, but then they're buying into it. You know that they're buying into it, and they're doing it only so that they can control it. They're also delaying all these cases, like XRP and Ripple's case and stuff like that. They're just looking. They're looking to push things off as long as possible so that they can gain control over the space.
Yep.
So it's just important to just keep your heads up, to just know what's going on, and just realize that what crypto is replacing, the banking system, is actually far more controlling and devious than people even think about crypto. You have ordinary, everyday people thinking that crypto is a
100%.
scam, but they don't even seem to realize how much they get screwed by their own bank.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. I agree, Faz. I mean, and there's you could go into arguments about like news and what's covered and opinion versus fact and why things are done certain ways, and I don't even know that I have a
none of
direct
the political news talks about how you're getting screwed by your bank, by the banking system. Those people that can write their own loans, they can invent money. They they don't run out of money. And the whole monetary system is broken, and yet everybody seems to be worrying about, other things that they think are more important, like our right to do this or our right to do that. And it's like
too complicated.
That's it. It's because politics is easy. Your real life is complicated.
Yeah, I mean, in the practical sense, it's like it's overwhelming to a lot of people to like, and it's stress. I know, like like among my my friends, my generation, like, and a lot of my friends are went to school that I went to college with and all this. There's a general, including myself. Man, I don't want anything to do like it's so much easier to just not get involved in the complicated aspects of the economy and how all that stuff works, because things have gotten so complicated and you don't ever know what and your point with the news, well, you don't know what's right, what's true, and what's false. And I think, and I'll add in here, that's an important thing that I try, and then I hope readers can see it, is that, like, when I'm going to give you what I'm seeing as a facts. I'm going to give both sides. And then I'm going to also, like, if I give my opinion, it's clearly, I'm not stating it as a fact, because that's the problem. And it's tempting, because what makes headlines and what runs the world now is the headers, is the titles. That's what people read, and then they move on. We're getting into all kinds of different subjects here, I know, and I'm going on and on, but like, I can write, and trust me, there's over 45 articles on here. And when I look at, and a lot of times I don't write the title until I'm done with the article. So I look at the title, and there's some of it is like, well, I could write this, but that's not, and that might get more eyes, more attention, but that's it. But is that true, that headline? Nah, and it's not. But that's not always black and white. You know what I mean? Like, if you write a headline and you have a topic, you want to, your intention as the writer and as the website, it's a great example of this is the recent article at Forbes, the Forbes article that changed, that said Gary, it was the headline was
from
Gary,
Rosalind Layton, was it?
yeah, that she said the headline was Gary Gensler resign. Well, that's a headline. I mean, that's the type of thing that like grabs people's attention. But
Well,
is it
it
like,
was an opinion
is
piece. It was.
and it always was an opinion piece. You're right. But my point is that like, people are going to see that, and if it fits their narrative, then they'll push it. You know?
Yeah, and so crypto's political battles are just beginning.
100%.
And people think that people see this latest downturn, and like I said, some people think that crypto is over. I'm thinking it hasn't even begun, and it's hard to know how things are going to be, because right now you can see the U.S. federal government, the U.S. in general is fighting. Various parts of the U.S. is fighting over who's in charge of crypto. I personally feel that it's too big. I think crypto is an asset class, and
that's a good question for you. Sorry to interrupt. That's a great question. Who's in charge of crypto regulation? Who do you think? First question: do you think there should be one unified agency that's in charge of crypto in the US?
So it's like saying, should somebody be in charge of moving around in the United States? Well, there's transportation. There's me and you driving on the road. There's shipping, and then there's security reasons. There's a few different agencies that are involved with it. There's Department of Homeland Security, there's Department of Transportation, and then there's other the DMV. So they've all divided it up. I have a feeling crypto is going to be divided up in that way because it hits so many areas. NFTs, for example, hit different areas than coins. So NFTs, I mean, if you have NFTs that focus on real estate titles, well, then real estate law has to apply to those NFTs. You can't just say, well, all crypto has the Department of Crypto, because then they're going to have a real estate department, subdepartment, and they're going to have subdepartments for everything. So it should just be that real estate simply says, okay, and if you're paying in crypto, and if you're using NFTs as a title, this is what you do. So there's President Biden did do an executive order asking everybody in the various departments to address crypto in some way. That's actually not a bad way of going about it. And I believe all he really said is, how are you going to solve this problem? He didn't really say you've got to do this or you've got to do that. So I don't think it's possible for one agency to regulate crypto.
Yeah, and so do you think that it's possible for because I tend to agree, but because right now everything is pointing to these agencies and these authorities. All they're going to do, and what I worry about, is they're just going to continue to fight for who has more authority and trying to get a little bit more and a little bit more. So can they, as Biden's executive order asked, can they cooperate and work together effectively to create something that actually works someday?
Well, my experience with working with the federal government, with the military, and with state government is that a lot of times the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and there are fiefdoms everywhere. So, in fact, it's a problem with any large entity. So I'm going to say maybe. I think that there will be a patchwork of solutions, just like there's a patchwork of solutions with our current laws, other things. Some laws have more solutions than others. Nobody really argues that much about traffic laws. It's okay, red light, green light, yellow light. We know what those are for. We know generally when they get placed. Highways, people sometimes bitch about the speeds that they can go, but nobody sits there and tries to drive differently on highways. Nobody's reinventing how a highway works. Well, not yet, until maybe robot cars will change how that is. But nobody's really arguing too much about those. Crypto is so new, it upends everything else. I bet this, as far as crypto compares to Department of Transportation, this is like the year 1910 right now. I mean, back then they barely had traffic lights. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a long time. These rules are figured out by people, not machines. Unfortunately for the people, these machines have already done their part. So crypto is going to continue to transact while they decide that something is legal or illegal, and they're just going to tell you that whatever you did was wrong one day. That was completely legal before, completely automatic. So yeah.
Oh, well, so I think you bring up a good point talking about the traffic and roads and highways, because look, you have XRP, you have Bitcoin that'll be programmed to just run. There doesn't need to be a regulator regulating anything. The regulation comes in to, the big catch on that is, hey, we want to make sure people aren't getting screwed. So, in order to do that, if you're talking about a DeFi loan,
It's one of
your
many
Celsius,
things. But
yeah.
yeah.
So, just as an example, the the companies that do the DeFi loans, right? Well, you don't want people getting taken advantage of, paying 30% interest and then losing their tokens in a collateral run, and that's really where it is. The regulation should be, from my standpoint, should be looked at as what you're doing, because
Well,
there's a lot of things that you can automatically program in there, and it will not need a shred of
okay.
regulation at all.
So what they're gonna do, in my opinion, is they're gonna regulate the people, not the thing. For example, if you go on the highway right now, you can choose to just go drive your car into another lane of traffic. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, unless you have a Tesla, but even then, not much. But there's nothing stopping you from going into another line of traffic. There's nothing stopping you from pulling out a gun and shooting somebody. However, so they can't regulate whether a gun functions or not, or whether a car functions or not, but they can regulate how you approach it. So it might be that there's going to be a required layer on top of all these L1s that we're used to using. Like right now, I go onto MetaMask and I make an Ethereum transaction. I'm doing it at almost the base level. I say almost because MetaMask is facilitating the transaction for me. The federal government's going to say, if you ever touch a blockchain, you need to do these 50 things. And then so now, whenever me and you use MetaMask, now it's going to ask for our social security number in order to facilitate that transaction. You could go and do the transaction yourself with a console app to the actual blockchain, but then it's going to be the federal government's going to see your wallet and they're going to say, what did you use, so we can go after them?
Right.
Oh, you
Okay,
did
but
that
wait.
yourself? Then you're in violation of law.
No. But you see, that's not regulation. That is just
enforcement.
monitoring.
I just gave examples, and I gave examples of
Right.
regulation. Regulation can have monitoring as part of its requirements.
So regulation is basically another word for taxation or invasion of privacy.
No. Regulation
No,
can be
so-
used for
so why-
taxation, but regulation
why do you
itself
need
is
to
just a set of
regulate?
rules. Regulation is just a set of rules. Those
Why
rules
do
can
I
be
need
for anything.
rules to buy anything on MetaMask? I have the rules; they're already there. I can go trade this token for that token.
Again,
There
you're
doesn't need to
talking
be
about.
any other rules.
Okay, regulation is everywhere in life, and it's used in other ways besides taxation. Again, regulating how the roads
All right.
work is a perfect example. There's no taxation there. You drive on the right
Here's-
side of the road in the United States. That's regulation.
Right. And both of you guys make interesting points. The fact of the matter is what you're right, Fess. Regulation is just rules. That's rules from the government. That's what regulation is. It's guidelines. But let's say in the future, everything you do is like every transaction is on the blockchain, and it's about like, well, so I'm over in another country it's all about, and what we're seeing is governments foreseeing who actually controls. Like, if this is a global economy and it is by its foundation, do you know what? It's a this is not something like, it's not like the road system in certain ways where we have countries that have borders and land, and now we're doing things that are moving across the planet in a crazy at the instances, like just in seconds, and we're still who is actually going to control that? And I think that that's what we're starting here, is like governments around the world and the agencies within the U.S. government also, they're all who has the authority to actually enforce or to make the regulation. Because like you said, like you were saying, Titan, like who cares where I'm at? I'm using a VPN. I'm bouncing it off of this. I'm making a transaction. Who has control? Is it because I'm a U.S. citizen? The U.S. has control over me? Well, then they can't, like, you see what I'm saying?
I'm hearing some hand wringing now. When you're wondering about who has control over an electronic transaction, you have a number of levels there. One, you have the financial transaction. Two, you have the hardware that you're using, and three, you have the line, and then four, you have the who owns the Well, I'll go back, just stay with the transmission line. So right now, our transmission lines for the internet are regulated. In order to affect a crypto transaction, you must use the internet right now. So if you really want to get down to brass tacks, the FCC could be that regulator. So now that is where they will go if they figure that they have no other way to stop it. They're going to say, okay, is this a Bitcoin protocol? Then block it. And then they can. Now, what's neat about Bitcoin is you don't always need, you need at least one person connected to the internet, because the other person can just show you a barcode and the transaction can be facilitated. But you need at least one person. So we already have somebody that is empowered to regulate that space, but it's obviously kind of outside of their wheelhouse. There's a lot of subdivisions underneath what the FCC does. So it's all the smaller agencies that are going to fight over what's allowed and what's not allowed. But the FCC was used for regulating the internet. The same thing came with the internet. You know, it's like, wow, look at the internet. It's decentralized. And then they centralized it into trunks. And now those trunks are owned by certain entities, which are controlled by the government and regulated by the government. And now you can't.
Is the same thing going to happen? Will that? Do you see that happening again?
Well, it is happening in various countries. The question is it going to happen everywhere for everything? Well, no. There's always going to be a place that will. See, that's the cool thing about crypto. Is fine if half of the world decides that what they're doing is illegal, then the other half is going to be like, you know what, we're actually making money from this, so we're going to just let it go. And so you have countries like El Salvador and some South American countries, and African countries, which are starting to embrace crypto. And I think they're going to kind of grassroots bring Bitcoin into it must be used no matter what.
There's gonna always be an economic model. That's right. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing around the world, like that countries that are struggling now and third world countries, like they're trying to. It's just a business. It's like they can potentially, just like you're envisioning. You know, they picture a world versus another world where it's basically crypto enabled versus crypto restricted.
Right, and it might be honestly that if I have a lot of crypto and it becomes illegal in the United States, then I'll just move to a country where I can get to my money, change it into cash, move back. I mean, there you go. And then that'll be the place to go is El Salvador on vacations, just because you know you can get your crypto taken care of, or you can make those crypto transactions. So there's humans are very creative, and they try to find ways around every single rule that there is. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have rules, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have too many rules, and you shouldn't have not enough rules. I feel that there's got to be a balance, and we don't know where that is. I think our entire society needs to grow up in relation to crypto and finance something's got to change fundamentally about finance, because there's where the war is going to be, and it's going to tear apart countries as countries are fighting themselves as to what they use for value. And unfortunately, this whole concept is thousands of years old. Once countries started deciding that they were going to control the value, that's the root of all this.
I tend to agree. I mean, I think that's what we're going into, a new age. That, I mean, it's crazy to think about that some people still think that this is a scam and nothing. It doesn't matter whether even like it's even associated. Say
Any new
dead.
system is technically illegal.
Yeah. The idea behind blockchain and the technology itself is it's different. That things are changing, and that's why that's we're covering it, we're talking about it, and that's why we're probably, the guys that are here, the people that are listening, you're ahead of it. Doesn't mean that necessarily that we've got a huge advantage, but what you're saying is, I completely agree with, is that the future over the next 50 years, like the way the world shapes, the way that wars, the way that arguments are, everything is blockchain is gonna be a part of it, because it has to be. That's what, to me, it's such a, it's that option and that product being out there there's too much opportunity for business, for opportunity to do. There's too many use cases. Real estate, there's too many different things that are going on, that every country, it's such a massive scale, I guess, when it comes down. Just what I'm trying to say is that the idea that it's going away, it's not going away. It might not be called crypto, but it's not going away. It can't. There's a money making opportunity, and as long as that's there, it will exist.
So I think it's going to take. At first, I used to think it'd be like 10 years and 20 years. I mean, it could be as much as 100 years. And the question is, what's gonna survive? Because over the next 50 years or 100 years, you're going to have that maybe Bitcoin's fine, and then finally governments get to the point where they start controlling KYC and making KYC part of it. That might be how crypto winds up.
Well, say someday you have kids growing up doing business, doing transactions, and doing business on the blockchain from their first purchases all the way through, just like social media has happened. And then those guys are going to be the ones regulating someday, but that's going to take 2 generations for that to happen. So I feel like we have a bunch of regulators that are still behind.
I feel like KYC needs to be a separate part, which is I can have my wallet, and then if maybe Burger King wants to allow me to buy something from there. I
like that idea, Faz.
And then if I want to shop at Burger King, well, then I'd have to give them my information. I go to the grocery store right now, and the first thing they say is, "What's your phone number?" And I go, "Why?" And they say, "Well, you want some discounts?" No, I don't. But every single place I go, they're asking me my phone number. Yep. That's because in the old world, before all this privacy concern came up, companies built up mailing lists, and they would always get you to be part of their mailing list by offering coupons and ask your phone number and stuff like that, so they can market to you. And so everybody,
value.
Yes,
they're gaining value back.
And now we're commoditizing that value into coins, and we're taking it out of their hands. And there's so many Apple carts being upset right now.
Yeah.
That, I mean, the entire society is just wigging the fuck out. So it just can't be solved right away. So there's going to be just years and years and years of just outrage. But yes, it would be great to see a separate KYC provider. And when I go to Burger King, they say, can I have your KYC? And I'd say, you're going to sell me a burger? They're going to say, well, you need KYC. Then I'll just go across the street to a store that I don't have to KYC. That's what I'd like to see.
Well, a lot of these KYCs that we're seeing coming out now is following that model to where you can customize your KYC, right? So you go onto their platform and you enter absolutely everything. It's kind of like doing your taxes, right? It could take you 2 months. You get every piece of information you could possibly think of, and you dump it into this KYC, and then the magic starts, because these apps are going to allow you to customize that and make profiles, right? So if you go to Burger King, you can give them first name, address only. And that's this number. And you push the button for that preset, and it'll kick out just that information to them. Whereas if you're going to go to register at an exchange, you have your exchange profile set up that'll dump in your first, last name, your social, your date of birth, and all the information they need, but it only gives them that. It doesn't collect aggregate data that can be used
Who
in
protects
a
that?
well,
Okay,
see, there's the key, right? So
about that
there's where the
data,
blockchain technology
about the
comes in.
aggregate data. See, if you allow the exchange of just your phone number for a single transaction, they've recorded it at that point. They keep the aggregate data. So as soon as you give anybody one piece of information, they will record it. So when you say that the aggregate data won't be released or anything, no, they're just recording it, just like they do right now when they ask your phone number.
I mean, I agree. I was gonna let Titan respond to that, but I mean, you're right. It. I guess they're already responding. But what I was thinking, some of the point that he was getting to is like, if it's possible, I have no idea. I'm way below this, but like, if there's a way to share specific amounts of information, like you brought up, Faz. So one company asks for this piece of information, the other company doesn't, and then it's going to get more and more complicated, and down where you can create a, like, all right, so here's one, I'm going to give you this much information, and although I gave the people across the street the same amount of information, well, you can still get the same discount if you give this company that information, even though it's all recorded and all that. But then there's some that you can't. But it, you kind of, there's like levels. That's just like a down. That's like a like as things progress and how we end up with profiles.
See,
down the road.
crypto isn't a solution to that problem. People start talking about crypto as like, I'm going to get my own privacy to do other things. No, you're not. If you're going to buy something at 7-Eleven with Bitcoin, the cameras are going to record you. They're going to find other ways to violate your privacy. Crypto is just a different form of money and value transfer. What's scary about it is, for the government, all of a sudden we can quantify things that were never quantified, like, I don't know, game pieces. That I just heard something on Anthony Pompliano's cast this morning where he was talking about Uber was never expected to do well because people didn't realize that Uber was additional stuff. They didn't replace taxis. They did something else entirely different that taxis didn't do. And so crypto is offering a service that traditional money doesn't do. And the reason people go to new groundbreaking things is because that thing that wasn't there before is now there. So we get a certain amount of ownership in our own value, which we never had before. And an example would be in a game. When you play a game, if you spend 6 hours playing a game, you built up some value. You get some ownership in that, and then you can sell that value to someone else. That's something that's value that came out of nowhere, and the federal government goes, we need to tax that because that's value and we regulate value. So it's all these things already existed, and we can't act like crypto is so new that it's going to replace that. It's not going to replace a thing. They're still going to control. The government's still going to try to control you, just like they did before.
Yeah, good point.
And now everybody's depressed.
Oh man, Faz, what are you doing, dude? Oh,
just being honest. That's my thing.
No. Just because I would say, to look at things from the other side of it is that, like, Yeah, you're right, and there's and that it's important. That's one of the reasons I like talking to you is that sometimes you can help me like come back to realization, like come back to reality on certain things, and it's but on the at the same end, the creating value out of nowhere was something was something you mentioned that is something that's really interesting as as an MBA in business and looking at all these things, studying companies like Uber and all that moving up. It's always that idea is interesting to me, and it's all about like finding, like we always talk about, you find a need and and give that in and you fulfill that, like that consumer's need, and then you get value. And there's some needs that we don't even realize we have yet. And it's like, look back at 100 years from now, and like versus our grandfathers compared to now, how many more needs or what we would classify as needs do we have now than we did back then, and what we're paying for? And that's just kind of a little bit of the progression of what we've seen, and just the progression of an economy. But crypto is got it's going to so let's look at if you look at market share in industries that are already established, it's gonna it's there. I'm looking at it, and I just wrote an article, and I've been looking at it and like been thinking about it as far as live event ticketing. But that's like 1 out of 1,000, and everywhere I look at, and if we're gonna take positive outlook on it and get away a little bit from the government's that whole issue, is that like there's so much there. There's market share that exists that can be that is possible, that could be eaten up slightly by crypto. Then there's also completely new places that there will be markets in the future that don't exist now.
My whole thing for getting into crypto, honestly, to be honest, is not about, well, let's just get away from the government. I've already realized, I realized even beforehand, that the government's going to control stuff. I just know that it's going to be the next big thing, and it looks very interesting because there's a potential for a lot of control and a lot of stuff to build upon. And I think it's actually going to happen, so I might as well get in on it early. And of course, the risk is, will it actually happen? So if I buy a bunch of Bitcoin now, in 30 years, will it actually be everything I thought it was going to be? I don't know. It's a risk.
Nobody can. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think it will do well, and I certainly hope. I am optimistic, and I feel better when I see various. There's a lot of crypto political arms coming up, which are starting to kind of lobby for crypto in the government, and crypto is starting to get a voice in the U.S. government. So that does make me feel a little bit better.
Well, and since I'm here, we'll kind of like some of the stuff that I cover. Like, yeah, there are like that's hitting on some of the things. And why, the reason that's happening is because, and that's going to continue to happen as awareness among the public and the voters happen. Like, as the politicians are only going to do what voters want them. Well,
they're going to do what they're going to do. Let's just leave it at that.
They're going to do what they're going to, yeah. But if the public's not interested and not throwing a fit about something, then in a lot of cases, that's like the initial driver. Now it gets a lot more complicated as things go up. But you're right. Like you're starting to see, there certain senators and congressmen are almost like placing crypto. They're wanting to add like a pro crypto title to the end of their name moving forward. And I think that is a trend that will continue. Like I'm going to find it here in a second. The guy that came out, asking for more answers about, Tom Emmer, came out asking for questions. He's kind of shown a history of pro crypto, but like he came out like asking, well, this is against precedent what you did against Tornado Cash. Like there's no precedent for this.
Tornado Cash is
I need answers.
Tornado Cash is interesting because this is the first time that I'm aware of that the U.S. government has taken action against a program rather than people. And I think the federal government, if they tried hard enough, will say that really we're just about regulating the people and that the people should not do it. But the way that they wrote it is that we're sanctioning Tornado Cash. And then they go after the developer of Tornado Cash because that way they can tie it to a person. See, this is why Satoshi Nakamoto was smart and got the fuck out. You know, he got Bitcoin working and then he left because he realized that if he was around, people just come after him. And
100%.
And I think that, well, back in 2017, when I was first getting into crypto, my understanding was that every project that got into crypto would eventually planning to drop any sort of involvement with it. That way, there could be nobody to go after. But lo and behold, you have a lot of companies that are doing things directly with crypto. And GameFi is in particular, you're having a lot of companies that are creating coins and then using it in their games. It's like you're giving them a target. If they did things right, they would make it so that this whole system could support itself, like Bitcoin was planned. But that remains to be seen.
I completely agree with that. I think they get ahead of themselves because there's funding. There's obvious funding needs, and there's reasons for things that whether they can promote it as one thing, but you know, they come out with these coins, and you know, many of them, almost all of them, it's not necessarily anybody stealing, anybody even doing anything wrong. It's just a way of funding their business, and it's a faster way. Oh, there's also, Vaz, I mean, it's a race. Everything's a race. Everything is and it's the way that it is. It's the way that the whole system works, is who gets there, who can do it first. And so if you don't have the money to do it, then you don't have much of a chance. So that's why, I mean, you get why it happens, why we're seeing coins come out of nowhere, and you know, people are claiming value that doesn't exist, right?
Well, there's a variety of reasons. One is the obvious scam reason, but another one is just like Uber. If you want to create value, you have to invent it first. And Uber invented the value of managing a bunch of people that they didn't own. And so
you said you have to invent the value first. You have to create the value first. Keep going, but that's right. That's the important line.
So what I'm seeing in crypto, and maybe I'm a bit optimistic, is everybody and their brother is simply creating a coin, and they're saying this is value. It just so happens to be that it would be value if everyone else in the world got on board with their idea. So if I invented a Faz coin right now, and every time you listen to Faz radio, you'd get a coin, and then
I was wondering when that was happening.
Maybe.
I want to be like one of the OGs.
But if every time you listen to Faz radio, you got a coin, and then people started trading coins amongst each other, I have asserted some value, which then other people buy into, and then they make it work by just democracy alone. But everybody wants to do that. It is possible for that to happen, but it's once you have one set of value out there, like Bitcoin, it's kind of hard to keep going. And so all these altcoins are trying to do the same thing as Bitcoin. And they're just saying, okay, games have value. When you play a game and you get things in a game, that has value. Well, that's not a bad idea. It's a good idea. And it never existed before. It passes the bullshit test. So, okay, now which coin do you pick? Well, there is no generic game coin right now. There's Galacoin, there's Decentraland, there's Sand. I mean, okay, what you're going to
pick? Thousands of others.
So they Engine, I believe, is a group of games or a group of things. Right. But each one has their area. But there's no Bitcoin for GameFi. So obviously,
there doesn't need to be.
Well, you'd think. Well. The way
it's
that the people in charge, the people that are in charge, personally, I think that all these coins are fine. It's okay if you have Galacoin and Sand and Decentraland. You don't need one coin. But those that are in charge will push toward a single value thing. In fact, what they'll do, to be honest, is regulate Bitcoin to some degree And then Bitcoin will have security features, and it will have game features, and it will have this feature, and that everybody will have an L2 and L3 and all that stuff on top of Bitcoin so that the value can be attached to Bitcoin. That way,
Well,
you could do that.
well, you could, right? But you don't need a central game coin. I can take my Gala tokens and in 3 seconds on Uniswap turn them into sand tokens. I mean, it nothing standard needs to be made. You can swap freely amongst any token or any coin and jump into whatever ecosystem you want to jump into. That's the beauty of crypto, because when you have that single solitary thing like a US dollar, right? It's accepted everywhere. Well, if you don't want to accept my Dogecoin, that's okay. Takes me 4 seconds to turn it into Bitcoin, and oh yeah, you do accept that. There you go. There's your payment. Real simple, real easy. You don't need any of the standardizations. Now, the standardizations are good for let's say the government to monitor things, but it isn't necessary.
Oh, I'm fine. If having worked for the government, I certainly see a benefit in standardizing things. The reason you standardize things is so that people can understand. If you have rules for the road, then you can actually develop for that road. So if your road can, all the roads right now, they have speed limits, they have weight limits, all the bridges have weight limits and stuff like that. That way you can reliably know that you can make a truck to deliver things across that road and it will get to its destination. So it's easier for people to develop in your economy if you regulate. So
Yep.
the problem becomes, once you regulate something, then you're kind of limited on how much money you can make. And then, of course, prices go up, and then that squeezes your profit margin, and then eventually people start looking for something new. And so if you're a trucker right now, you're hurting because of gas prices. So you probably want to look for an electric truck. If electric trucks aren't going to work, you're going to look for anything else. And if crypto is your way out, well, that's an unregulated, any new area. It could be crypto, it could be something else. I mean, if you decide to fly drones or teleport things from one place to another, there's no rules for that. So you can make just fuckloads of money in an area where there's no rules until the rules come. And then you can't. And then you're tied down. And so I see those rules being really, really hashed over and argued over for the next 50 years.
Bro, it sounds like Faz is saying we should all just be looking for the Wild West and just look for things that don't have rules. You're right? Right?
No, I'm saying that's exactly what happens. That's
Oh,
exactly
it
what
is.
happens.
It is. 100%.
Well,
You're absolutely right.
We are in the glory days right now without these regulations. I mean, this is the time where you're going to be able to make the money that you won't be able to make 50 years from now. The rules will change so that the corporations and the rich people are the only ones that can continue to do that. They don't want normal people to become millionaires because that gives them too much power. And if people have power, they don't have power. So that's really where this regulation is set to do, is how to get control, like you mentioned, but also how to keep people from becoming able to control themselves.
Well, I think you went a
And
bit too far there.
no, I didn't, because I mean, think about it. If you were, let's say you were a Bitcoin whale, let's say in 2010, you were the guy that went out and
I'm fine
spent
with
your
that part.
entire paycheck.
I'm fine with
Right,
that part. It's the whole if you've got power, they don't got power. I just made a case that regulation is good for keeping everybody on the same page so you can develop along things. In 100 years, when all the regulations of crypto might be completely settled and people aren't making a lot of money, all along the way, the excuse was to get things to where things can develop fast. When you do have regulation, you do have all these services that will develop using that regulation. They'll develop very fast. The problem is the rich people have more resources. They're going to make the money. You're not going to. and you can't be allowed to take all the big risks that they do, because you'll fuck things up, and they don't. I don't see it as a power thing as much, although that's certainly in there. Regulation isn't there just for power. However, if you're regulating, you'll certainly probably fall victim to the whole power thing.
Well, yeah. So it look where we are with this. Look how tight the regulations are for stock market with FINRA and the SEC and everything else, right? It's geared towards those who know how to play the game. Your accredited investor rules, all of that stuff, all the big money makers and the things that you can do are geared towards that. They just want you to throw your money in there so that they can guess better where this is actually going to go, so they can take the biggest profits. And if the regulations that come out, you have to watch what those are exactly, right? So if you watch, are 87,000 IRS agents needed to catch 1 million millionaires? Or is 87,000 necessary to go to the eBay people who are now getting emails that if they don't put their social security number in, they can't get their money out of eBay?
I'd be
That's
careful.
what they need those IRSs for,
I'd
right?
be careful of making.
Find an article on this on the website RaisingStake.com. All right, go ahead.
I'd be careful of making a lot of claims based upon implication. There's a lot more to that, why the IRS needs the money, than just that. But in that one, you're making a very targeted question sound like a lot more than it is.
No, it's reality. Look, here's what people will watch these regulations, and the regulations won't be geared towards the people that are not using the available resources within crypto, right? It's not going to be geared towards the people creating real estate transactions with NFTs. Let's say you sell your house by NFT. It's going to be geared towards strictly the profit and where that comes from. And to be able to collect whatever they can collect, since they can't control it, they're going to control what it becomes and what comes out of it. So that's when I say you have this regulation is nothing more than them trying to control it from the outside. They can't control the inside like they do the stock markets and the businesses and all the laws they write that protect their buddies and screw everybody else over. You have to watch how they regulate, not the regulation itself. I'm a little passionate about that, if you can't tell.
Mr. Luke, you had some comments. It sounded like you were holding back.
Well, I was just wondering what you guys thought about Bored Apes Kingship deal and M&Ms and Mars Company and all that stuff. Just kidding. No, I mean, I think like this stuff is that's. I mean, we're all passionate about it, and there's been good points on every side, and it's all still just learning for me, and I sitting here, and I probably have sounded like I think I know what I'm talking about throughout this process, throughout the interview, but for me, like I it's about like listening to all this stuff and realizing, man, there's so much going on. Everybody has their own thoughts on it, but there's so much more to learn, and I try, and I think it's part of what I like about writing is, although like I can write something without having to try to make a claim. I know everything about this topic, and or I know not that, but like I know what I'm talking about. I'm the authority on it because I don't think anybody. I mean, if anybody says they know everything about what's going on in regulation and NFTs and all this different stuff, nobody has the. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there that keeps track of all this stuff all 100% of the time, but it's. I guess I'm rambling, but it's just that it's all interesting and it's all super important to me and to the future. But I think it's something that like is worth talking about for sure.
I think this is a great stepping stone. I'm glad you said that because we sit back and we go, oh, we have these regulations from the 1940s. We have the quote way we do this and the way we do that, and mortgages are this, and this is the way it's always been done. To me, one of the biggest revelations of crypto is that almost force drags people into the present because it's something they have to face. They have to face this technology. They have to learn this technology. They have to pull themselves out of the past and into the present and the future because Luke, you've said it like 10 times tonight and you're absolutely right. This is where things are and this is where things are going. And you have to be able to keep up with it. And if not, you're going to be left behind. But it's pulling people into modern. And whenever somebody changes, the biggest thing in the world for people is making a change. They want routine, they want familiarity. And when you introduce crypto to them, it knocks them out of their comfort zone. But I think this is the kick in the pants that people need, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's just going to continue whether when and it's what that point is whether the price of and it affected me. It's almost like a transition you go through when you get into this is like you're always watching Bitcoin price and watching the market and it going up and down and it affecting you on a daily basis. But like it doesn't matter anymore to me. I've like gotten past that stage now, and I think a lot of people eventually make it there where this is where long term there's all this is here. This is where things are going, and whether Bitcoin's at 20,500 or 22,500 is not really doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
It does. And money is going to be digital, whether it's crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or the CBDC, right? It's going digital. So you're going to have to jump on the train one way or another. You can run on the train that's on the government rails, or you can run on the train that's going down the bleeding edge. But either way, people are going to have to hop on. And there's really no turning back at this point. Like Faz had mentioned a little bit earlier, it once you open this can of worms like this, here we go. And you've got to just embrace it. Your news service, I think, is going to be vital to help people understand what's going on because the way that you write these things, somebody who has very little knowledge of this or somebody who has a ton of knowledge in this can still pull some value out of those articles. And that's
Thanks, man. That's
what
what we're trying
makes
to
it
do.
so perfect, right? So when I read those, I'm not an expert by any means, but being probably better than average in this industry, it it really I was able to pull nuggets out of that. But it was also written so that somebody who maybe, is just exploring this or trying to figure it out could also pull some value out of that. And I hope that you continue on that path as you do all of these articles and all of these writings, that you're going to be able to keep that spectrum of an audience where every level can pull something out of there. I think you're going to knock it out of the park with this.
Appreciate it, bud. No, I agree. I think that's what we're gonna try to do. That's what I think it's important. So, and I can happily say like I've done it from sales jobs and all the other things that I've done over the years. This is one area where I feel like I can, if I can educate some people and and help people get into the business, get into the industry, then I'm actually making a difference. So it's a fulfilling job, and I'm really excited, and I will be doing it for a long time to come. So.
Well, maybe we can get you back on the show then, and you could tell us more, because it sounds like you're going to be a pretty good source for news information.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to get back on this show, but we'll see.
I see how it is.
You just have to blackmail him for that Faz coin is what you'll have to do.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
See, I was just telling somebody today, if I were to make a Faz coin and then make some sort of Faz game or something, then people get all butthurt that I wasn't Faz done at their Faz time, and then people say that I'm a Faz scam.
Oh, they'd be coming after you hard, man. I might write an article about how Faz sold out.
There you go. Even before I even started, be like, man, he sold out because he's just talking about a coin.
No, what we're going to do is we're going to put a soon list up on your site so that all the promises he made can be tracked.
Yes.
I keep telling people, don't make promises, and then you won't have to worry about this.
We'll see, Faz. We're going to look
tell
back
people
at
shit. I'll be like, look, I'm making something. You want the coin or not? Shut the fuck up.
Well, hey, man, I bet over all these podcasts, I bet you said some things that we can bring up someday. So.
Oh, yeah. I get out of that by saying I'm human and I mess up, and
yes, sir.
Yep, good enough.
Oh, and
I forgive myself.
I respect both of you guys very much and appreciate you guys letting me on here, to be honest.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time for us. It's good to have you back on here. I did have one more thing to say before Faz takes us out of here.
Is this your last question?
No, it's not. No, it's not the last. Actually, now I have two. You reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is a huge thank you and a huge hand heart to the CFA community. Faz posted the other day. We are rapidly approaching the 2-year anniversary of CFA, and we're starting to get close to 2 years of Faz Radio. And we would not be here talking to epic people like Luke if it wasn't for you, the listeners, and you, the community at CFA. Thank you for making the last 2 years so kick-ass for all of us.
Should I make an NFT for the Faz Radio listeners? If people
I think you should.
I already
you
have
yelled
one.
at me last time I called you out for making an NFT.
Well, I actually have a few alternate Faz Radio NFTs I was going to come up with that I should make an NFT. Faz Radio titles that I could make into an NFT, and then I could just have it to where people tell me, hey, I want a Faz Radio original 2-year NFT.
Well, eventually you just do like everybody else, and like every 10 minutes, just break everything you're talking about and spend 2 minutes trying to get trying to pick somebody out of the chat that talks, and you can give them an NFT. It's real solid content. Trust me.
Okay,
awesome.
So Luke's going to get an NFT. Okay. I was thinking of having an NFT I was thinking of having an NFT just for guests. I actually made one for Bitbender, for example, and
nice.
gave a few extra out.
Yeah, it just comes with like a gift card for dinner or something. And that would make that I'll be waiting on it.
Oh, okay, sure.
It was great talking to you guys.
Awesome, Luke. You take it easy. We'll be watching you on RaisingStake.com. We'll put the link, of course, in the description of the show. And please put your comments in there. Have a look at it. Give Luke some feedback. And hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you super soon.
All right.
Again, everybody.
I'm going to hit that outro. Bye-bye, guys.